was admirably adapted to its present objects, and its natural advantages had been as ingeniously improved as economy and the limited means of a frontier post would very well allow. The hour which succeeded the arrival of the Scud was one of hurried excitement. The party in possession had done nothing worthy of being mentioned, and, wearied with their seclusion, they were all eager to return to Oswego. The sergeant and the officer he came to relieve had no sooner gone through the little ceremonies of transferring the command, than the latter hurried on board the Scud with his whole party, and Jasper, who would gladly have passed the day on the island, was required to get under way forthwith, the wind promising a quick passage up the river and across the lake. Before separating, however, Lieutenant Muir, Cap, and the Sergeant had a private conference with the ensign, who had been relieved, in which the last was made acquainted with the suspicions that existed against the fidelity of the young sailor. Promising due caution, the officer embarked, and in less than 3 hours from the time when she had arrived, the cutter was again in motion. Mabel had taken possession of a hut, and with female readiness and skill she made all the simple little domestic arrangements of which the circumstances would admit, not only for her own comfort, but for that of her father. To save labor, a mess table was prepared in a hut set apart for that purpose, where all the heads of the detachment were to eat, the soldier's wife performing the necessary labor. The hut of the Sergeant, which was the best on the island, being thus freed from any of the vulgar offices of a household, admitted of such a display of womanly taste, that, for the first time since her arrival on the frontier, Mabel felt proud of her home. As soon as these important duties were discharged, she strolled out on the island, taking a path which led through the pretty glade, and which conducted to the only point not covered with bushes. Here she stood gazing at the limpid water, which lay with scarcely a ruffle on it at her feet, musing on the novel situation in which she was placed, and permitting a pleasing and deep excitement to steal over her feelings, as she remembered the scenes through which she had so lately passed, and conjectured those which still lay veiled in the future.
"You're a beautiful fixture, in a beautiful spot, Mistress Mabel," said David Muir, suddenly appearing at her elbow; "and I'm no' gauge you're not just the handsomest of the two."
"I will not say, Mr. Muir, that compliments on my person are altogether unwelcome, for I should not gain credit for speaking the truth, perhaps," answered Mabel with spirit. "But I will say that if you would condescend to address to me some remarks of a different nature, I may be led to believe you think I have sufficient faculties to understand them."
"Hoot! Your mind, beautiful Mabel, is polished just like the barrel of a soldier's musket, and your conversation is only too discreet and wise for a poor devil who has been chewing birch up here these 4 years on the lines, instead of receiving it in an application that has the virtue of imparting knowledge. But you are no sorry, I take it, young lady, that you've got your pretty foot on terra firma once more?"
"I thought so 2 hours since, Mr. Muir; but the Scud looks so beautiful as she sails through these vistas of trees, that I almost regret I am no longer one of her passengers." As Mabel ceased speaking, she waved her handkerchief in return to a salutation from Jasper, who kept his eyes fastened on her form until the white sails of the cutter had swept round a point and were nearly lost behind its green fringe of leaves.
"There they go, and I'll no say joy go with them, but may they have the luck to return safely, for without them we shall be in danger of passing the winter on this island, unless, indeed, we have the alternative of the castle at Quebec. Yon Jasper Eau douce is a vagrant sort of a lad, and they have reports of him in the garrison that it pains my very heart to hear. Your worthy father, and almost as worthy uncle, have none of the best opinion of him."
"I am sorry to hear it, Mr. Muir. I doubt not that time will remove all their distrust."
"If time would only remove mine, pretty Mabel," rejoined the Quartermaster in a wheedling tone, "I should feel no envy of the commander in chief. I think, if I were in a condition to retire, the Sergeant would just step into my shoes."
"If my dear father is worthy to step into your shoes, Mr. Muir," returned the girl, with malicious pleasure, I'm sure that the qualification is mutual, and that you are every way worthy to step into his."
"The deuce is in the child! You would not reduce me to the rank of a non commissioned officer, Mabel?"
"No, indeed, sir. I was not thinking of the army at all, as you spoke of retiring. My thoughts were more egotistical, and I was thinking how much you reminded me of my dear father, by your experience, wisdom, and suitableness to take his place as the head of a family."
"As its bridegroom, pretty Mabel, but not as its parent or natural chief. I see how it is with you, loving your repartee, and brilliant with wit. Well, I like spirit in a young woman, so it be not the spirit of a scold. This Pathfinder is all extraordinaire, Mabel, if truth may be said of the man."
"Truth should be said of him or nothing. Pathfinder is my friend, my very particular friend, Mr. Muir, and no evil can be said of him in my presence that I shall not deny."
"I shall say nothing evil of him, I can assure you, Mabel; but at the same time I doubt if much good can be said in his favor."
"He is at least expert with the rifle," returned Mabel, smiling. "That you cannot deny."
"Let him have all the credit of his exploits in that way, if you please, but he is as illiterate as a Mohawk."
"He may not understand Latin, but his knowledge of Iroquois is greater than that of most men, and it is the more useful language of the two in this part of the world."
"If Lundie himself were to call on me for an opinion which I admire more, your person or your wit, beautiful and caustic Mabel, I should be at a loss to answer. My admiration is so nearly divided between them that I often fancy this is the one that bears off the palm, and then the other. Ah, the late Mrs. Muir was a paragon in that way also."
"The latest Mrs. Muir, did you say, sir?" asked Mabel, looking up innocently at her companion.
"Hoot, hoot! This is some of Pathfinder's scandal. Now I dare say that the fellow has been trying to persuade you, Mabel, that I have had more than one wife already."
"In that case, his time would have been thrown away, sir, as everybody knows that you have been so unfortunate as to have had 4.
"Only 3, as sure as my name is David Muir. The 4th is pure scandal; or rather, pretty Mabel, she is yet in petto, as they say at Rome, and that means, in matters of love, in the heart, my dear."
"Well, I'm glad I'm not that 4th person, in petto, or in anything else, as I should not like to be a scandal."
"No fear of that, charming Mabel; for were you the 4th, all the others would be forgotten, and your wonderful beauty and merit would at once elevate you to be the 1st. No fear of your being the 4th in anything."
"There is consolation in that assurance, Mr. Muir," said Mabel, laughing, "whatever they may be in your other assurance; for I confess I should prefer being even a 4th-rate beauty to being a 4th wife." So saying, she tripped away, leaving the Quartermaster to meditate on his success. Mabel had been induced to use her female means of defence thus freely, partly because her suitor had of late been so pointed as to stand in need of a pretty strong repulse, and partly on account of his innuendos against Jasper and the Pathfinder. Though full of spirit, and quick of intellect, she was not naturally pert, but on the present occasion she thought circumstances called for more than usual decision. When she left her companion, therefore, she believed that she was now finally released from attentions which she thought as ill bestowed as they were certainly disagreeable. Not so, however, with David Muir, accustomed to rebuffs, and familiar with the virtue of perseverance. He saw no reason to despair, though the half menacing, half self-satisfied manner in which he shook his head towards the retreating girl might have betrayed designs as sinister as they were determined. While he was thus occupied, the Pathfinder approached, and got within a few feet of him unseen. "'Twill never do, Quartermaster, 'twill never do," commenced the latter, laughing in his noiseless way. "She is young and active, and none but a quick foot can overtake her. They tell me you are her suitor, if you are not her follower." "And I hear the same of yourself, man, though the presumption would be so great that I scarcely can think it true."
I fear you're right, I do. Yes, I fear you're right. When I consider myself.